Hello, my friends. Hope y'all are doing well. Welcome to the Sweep Up the Middle podcast, episode 20, week 10 in the NFL. And also, if you see behind me, you see a lot of teaching supplies. So, as you know, my wife is a teacher, and she's about to start her job. So she's been stacking up on teaching supplies, and of course, my man cave / office has now turned into her storage room, so to speak. So we're dealing with that a little bit over the next couple weeks, so everything's going to be good on this end. But yeah, another great week of football. I personally got to go to the Cowboys-Chiefs game. That was a fun game. Cowboys dominated them throughout the whole game. Should have been 28-10 other than that Tyreek Hill Hail Mary with 3 blockers. It was a crazy ordeal. Amazing play. But yeah, got to watch a fun Cowboys game. And let's get into it. We're talking about getting the content quicker out for y'all. So I have my other screen over here that I have everything pulled up, so I'll be going back and forth. The buys this week are Baltimore, Kansas City, Oakland, and Philadelphia. So that being said, not as many as the last couple weeks with 6 buys, but we're moving on to star of the week, the bad man himself, Dak Prescott, going against the Falcons. The defense has allowed a top 10 quarterback in back-to-back weeks, and Dak has been a top 10 start in 5 of the last 6 weeks. If you got Dak Prescott, it's a no-brainer. He's my starter week this week. Moving on, Jared Goff versus the Texans. Last week, he put up 4 touchdowns and 28 fantasy points, and, it's the Giants, still a decent D, but Goff went off, man. And going against the Texans, defense has allowed 9 touchdowns and the most fantasy points to QBs on the road. Jared Goff, big week this week. Next, Josh McCown versus Tampa Bay Bucks. Josh McCown's starting to look like a starter. I know it's crazy and he's been a traveling man, but he's averaged just short of 20 fantasy points in his last 4 games. And their defense Tampa Bay's has allowed 5 different quarterbacks to finish in the top 10 in points this season. Josh McCown's a good start this week. He's in my bold predictions later. Move on to sit of the weeks for quarterbacks. Philip Rivers versus the Jacksonville Jaguars. Simply put, their defense has allowed more than 13 points to an opposing quarterback. Philip Rivers likes to force the ball. I think it's going to be turnover city. Jags D, good start this week. I'm sitting Rivers. Jay Cutler versus the Panthers. Yes, he threw 3 touchdowns against the Raiders, but the Panthers defense is a different level than the Raiders defense. The defense has had quarterbacks for an average of just 13 fantasy points per contest this year. I am sitting Jay Cutler versus the Panthers. Start of the week for running backs, Jordan Howard versus the Packers. Yes, you're kind of a little worried because 2 of the last 4 games he's only had 8 points or less. But Green Bay has allowed the 3rd most PPR points to runners on the road, and the Bears running backs have scored the 2nd most PPR points at home. This is a good matchup for Jordan Howard this week. I would start Jordan Howard for sure. Moving on, Matt Forte versus the Buccaneers. He has scored 11 plus PPR in 4 straight games. He led the Jets' backfields in snaps and touches in those last 4 games as well. And the Bucs have surrendered an average of 26 PPR points to running backs this season, which is the 3rd most. Matt Forte, he's beating father time. Start him this week. Last one, Alvin Kamara versus the Bills. Since they've traded Peterson, he's looked good. He's averaging 19 PPR points per game since the Peterson trade. And the defense has surrendered 3 top 20 PPR backs in the last 4 games. Kamara is a must-start this week against a Bills defense that's good, but not great. Sit of the week, Ameer Abdullah versus the Browns. He's going to be in the doghouse. I mean, he had 2 fumbles inside the red zone. You saw Theo Riddick getting the ball and their 3rd string Washington getting the ball in crunch time when they're trying to run out the clock. So I got to see Ameer Abdullah hold on to that football and gain some confidence back in that offense. He looked good. He just couldn't hold on to the football. So this week I'm sitting Ameer Abdullah as much as that hurts. And again, Joe Mixon. I've talked about him on the up and up. He's averaged only 3 yards per attempt since he's been the unquestionable back. But times allowed just 2 running backs to finish better than 15 in their last 6 contests. So with that being said, I just got to see more from Mixon, and it's not a good matchup this week. So I am sitting Joe Mixon. Now we will move on to wide receivers. And star of the week this week, Jarvis Landry versus the Panthers. Yes, I'm down on Cutler, but I'm up on Landry, and here's why. He's caught at least 5 passes in each game this year. He's found the end zone in 4 out of the 5 contests the last 5 games. And the Panthers have allowed 7 touchdowns to slot wide receivers. I still think Cutler's not going to have the best game, but again, I think Jarvis Landry is just a PPR machine in that target, having 5 per game this year. I'm starting Jarvis Landry versus the Panthers this week. Next, speaking of slot receivers, the best one in the NFL right now, Golden Tate versus the Browns. Golden Tate has scored 12 plus PPR points in the last 3 games. Browns have allowed 6 touchdowns to slot receivers this year, and Tate leads all slot receivers in receiving yards. Automatic start, going to be a top 5, kind of bold, for sure top 10 Golden Tate this week. And my last one, I was up on Josh McCown. I'm up on Robbie Anderson versus the Bucs. He scored a touchdown each of the last 3 games, and the Bucs have allowed an average of 16 catches and 177 yards, which is the 3rd most PPR to wide receivers. Robbie Anderson must start against the Bucs. Moving to sit 'em for wide receivers, I've got Jordy Nelson versus the Browns, who's averaged 4 PPR points in the last 2 games. The Bears have allowed just Antonio Brown, only Antonio Brown in the NFL, to rank better than 35th against him at home. Antonio Brown is the only receiver at home that has been better than 35th ranked that week. I am sitting Jordy Nelson. We obviously know that Aaron Rodgers is out. The backup has not looked that good. I'm forgetting his name. I'm going blank. I did it last night too. 3 years out of UCLA. I can talk about him. He's high school, went to Arizona. I just can't remember his name right now, but we'll move on from that. And then Keenan Allen versus the Jacksonville Jaguars. Jacksonville's defense has allowed only 1 touchdown and an average of total 15 PPR points per game to wide receivers at home total, and hasn't scored last 7 games. Keenan Allen hasn't scored the last 7 games, and Jacksonville's defense has only allowed 1 touchdown and only 15 PPR points to all of a receiving core per game. I'm not starting Phillip Rivers this week, and I'm not starting Keenan Allen this week. The Jacksonville Jaguars D is good. We'll move on to tight ends. Start of the week, Cameron Brate versus the New York Jets. Now, I know he's been up and down. He's been a roller coaster, and last week he put up less than 5 points. But with Mike Evans being suspended, somebody's got to catch balls from Ryan Fitzpatrick. We know Jameis Winston's out too. Ryan Fitzpatrick doesn't stretch the ball down the field. Cameron Brate's that great tight end in the seams and as well as working the middle. Cameron Brate's going to have a big week. Again, Mike Evans 1-game suspension. And the Jets have surrendered 17 PPR points per game to opposing tight ends on the road, which is the 6th most overall. I am starting Cameron Brate this week. We'll move on to Evan Engram versus the 49ers. 49ers, not a good matchup. Defense has allowed the 6th fewest PPR points to tight ends, so they're actually good at covering tight ends at 9 points per game, but Evan Engram is 4th in targets among tight ends this year. So I am for sure starting Evan Engram just because of the PPR standpoint of how many targets he's getting, and he's been a top 10 play this whole year. We'll move on next to Vernon Davis versus the Vikings. Simply put, Jordan Reed's out, and he's injured, and Kirk Cousins likes to use that tight end. You see him, Jordan Reed, when he plays, he's got a decent shot in PPR. He hasn't been scoring touchdowns. Vernon Davis, he's athletic. Father time means nothing to him. But the Vikings also have surrendered just 3 touchdowns to tight ends this season, so it's kind of scary as I was mentioning. But Davis has had double-digit PPR performances last week against Seattle. I think he has another one this week as well, too. And again, if Jordan Reed's out, Vernon Davis is your starter for sure. Moving on, sit of the week, Julius Thomas versus the Panthers. Thomas had 20 points versus the Raiders, but hasn't scored that many points in the last 4 games combined. So he kind of just had a game out of nowhere where Jay Cutler went to him. And the last point I'm going to make too about Julius Thomas is Carolina has surrendered just 8 points to tight ends at home on average. Not a good start. I'm not high on Jay Cutler this week. Julius Thomas hasn't proven enough for me, so I'm not starting Julius Thomas this week. And next is Coby Fleener versus the Bills. He scored 18 PPR points the last 6 games combined, only 18 PPR points. And what's weird is the first 2 games he scored 28 points. But like I said, I've talked about this all year. With the New Orleans Saints offense, they have so many options now with Kamara and Engram and Willie Snead coming back from suspension. And Thomas, there's just too much to go around, and they're starting to run the ball more, if you notice. Drew Brees is having a great year, but he's not having his usual, thousands and thousands of passing yards. They're handing the ball off more to Engram, and Kamara's getting a lot more touches, whether it's PPR or so on and so forth. So with that being said, I'm not starting Coby Fleener this week just for that reason. Move on to defensive starts. I'm starting the Lions, Rams, Steelers, Patriots, Seahawks, Panthers, Bears, and Titans this week. And then I'm sitting the Broncos, the Bills, the Cowboys, the Texans, the Chargers, the Dolphins, the Falcons, and the Skins. Moving on to bold predictions. Again, Josh McCown is scoring 20-plus points this week, and Robbie Anderson is a top 15 PPR wide receiver this week. So that's all for Sweep Up the Middle. Going to go a little bit over 10 minutes this week, But always, thank you so much. Always shout out to SUTM Podcast on Facebook and Twitter. Remember, go to mitchellryan21.com/SUTM for all your rankings. You can go in there and check out your whole team. Who do I need to start from wide receivers to running backs, whether it's PPR, half, or standard format, and you can see flexes. So you can put a running back in there and you can put a wide receiver in there. So it's super awesome. Always remember to subscribe here at my channel, as well as last week's SUTM video. And as always, this is Mitchell Ryan 21 checking out. Y'all have a good one.